Adisa Ramadhani from PB Class B 24 Edukasi Jurnal Pendidikan dan Pengajaran. Grammar interactions and cognitive language teaching classroom student teachers perceptions. Introductions. Grammar is the language framework and system of meaning. Every language seems to have a grammar, and person speaking in similar language will communicate because they naturally understand the grammar structure, which is the rules of meaning. According to Baston, language without grammar is going to be messy, and it is hard to understand language without looking for the basic framework. So grammar language will be impossible to learn effectively without following structural rules, or as it is in Ronald and Celia 20 and 17. They found that grammar plays a very important role in the study of language. The purpose of grammar is to educate those who use English to express their thoughts properly, both in speaking and writing. Research by Azad 20 and 30 indicate that grammar is an essential and inseparable part in language teaching. So teachers have tended to use communicative activities and teaching grammar instruction in. This means that in teaching English as a foreign language, it is necessary to consider not only how learners acquire grammatical com- concepts, but also how they learn to communicate. That is how they develop communications competence. In the importance, in the importance of teaching English grammar is a foreign language. Various methods that approach have been applied to enhance learner complicate savage Bitterlin and Prince to 20 and Sting. Recapitulate approach that have a significant impact on grammar instructions, including grammar translator method, direct method, audiolingual method, cognitive approach, natural approach, and communicative approach. Among them, the communicative approach, commonly called CLT, is one of the current trends of language teaching according to Lopez and Agulo. The main intention of CLT is designed to teach communicative competence, which involves part of speech and tense as a sentence constructions, a teaching technique that refers to several aspects of language, include the use of language for multiple purposes and functions. Distinguish between formal and informal oral and writing discourse, or as stated and based on the statement above, it can be concluded that grammar should be taught in communicative ways, which focus on developing the language to perform the skills. Using CLT to teach grammar in the second language classroom is an effort to improve student attitude towards language learning and to have positive effect on their learning process. Emphasis placed in grammatical mistake and fear of making grammar error has a negative impact on students. These are related to the finding of a study conducted by Nur Fakra. On his study, he revealed that students feel bored when learning English grammar because make them confused and lazy to learn. Further, Wilkins, the one who providing Europe with a standardized program for forest language teaching proposed a national syllabus which did not organize the syllabus in terms of grammatical structure but rather defined in that learning needed to interact with each other. Or as it is in Savigatan and Burns, it means the focus of CLT is language learning to communication, not through medical presentations of grammatical forms. The use of GLT is teaching grammar in the second language classroom as a means of learning. Furthermore, listener, framers, Richard and Goders, and Hammer communicative competence in the primary goal outings material as use encourage student of the language learning is learned by trial and error. Students mostly work in pairs and small group. Grammar is best learned to the process of communication. Teachers have a role as facilitator and monitor, and student as a negotiator and individually responsible to make themselves understand to be understood to the process of communications as it is in Yanti. From this statement, it can be concluded that using CLT provides students in revisions, accuracy, and memorizations grammar patterns, but they demand the student in order to negotiate meaning and the correct meaningful in forest context. Also, teachers will need to group the exercise in the CLT classroom that enable students learn to well in target language. CLT approach also goes that change the concept in how teach. Moreover, Thornbury distinguish there are two primary kinds of approach to teaching grammar in CLT: the swallow and approach and the deep and approach. The swallow and approach is taught grammar in a way that we can define as indicative, or it called as consequence raising the letter. The deep and approach to CLT consider the CLT consider the implied learning of grammar in communicative context without any previous and explicit teaching. So teaching grammar is communicatively mean help students get used to the rules and pattern in context either consciously or consciously paying in paying attention to student need. Also, the application whether the teacher chooses to teaching grammar in explains or implicit why its help depends on teacher perceptions and knowledge. For example, some teacher believes that teaching explicit grammar is helpful in CLT classroom, but in contrast, a few of them do not think that it is effectively. Teacher belief has been expressed in grammar teaching activities, and their belief have been influenced by their experiences. In the same way, according to Demut, teacher perceptions in divines as the process of opinion and understanding toward in subject based on their experience. The adoptions of CLT in Indonesia language teaching curriculum has gone through several change and development. Rahman state that the last curriculum in the Indonesia is usually called in curriculum 20 and 13 or key 13. Adapt GLT approach into its implications as city in Yanti. Not only that the probability of GLT keep increasing is as many teachers apply that concept of GLT in their classroom. For some previous related students on learning English Exactly, a research student was conducted to find out student-teacher professions in teaching grammar, instructions in communicative language teaching classroom. Review. Communicative language teaching or TLT is one of approach to language teaching. This approach was found that the awareness that language is a system for communication, not just a set of the rules, it switched the emphasis of traditional language teaching to grammar and teacher-centered classes to the active use of authentic language in learning and acquisitions. CLT is an approach that emphasizes communicative ability. For Homer research context that CLT describes a set of general principles grounded in the nation's communicative context that goal of second and foreign language teaching, a new approach that was involved as our understanding of the process of second language learning has developed for, from the definition above. That can be concluded that communicative language teaching or CLT is a language teaching that embraces intentions as concept of mean the and final aim of language learning. Communicative language teaching emphasizes on self-directions for student teacher no longer really and activities that involve with receptions carry and the memorizations of sentence. They require students to communicate in concept and communicate meaningfully in foreign language as Oxford 90 and 90 process that is important for active development of a new language. In addition, Brands and Camlin in Richard and Goddard's describe the role of learner in CLT as a delegate towards themselves in process of learning and the objective of learning emerging from the interaction in the role in the negator both in group and in classroom activities. And CLT students expect support in classroom activities. Students are recommended to use activities in part of group as research from other report that when students act in pair of small group on pairs, they perform various tasks using their target language for numerous functions or else. Responding to questions, questions, making demands, and giving feedback or assisted in various 2017. From the statement, it can be concluded that CLT allows students to interact more with other learners rather than with the teacher and work in pairs of small group. One of effective method to boost student communicative ability. Communicative active play an important role in teaching communicative language as research. Instead, in communicative competence, there are several approaches that help students involved with a learner in communication for their little word, diverse type to mind categories, and communicative activities. Communicative activities play an important role in teaching communicative language. As Richard Stan communicative content, there is several approaches that help students involve learning communications. With the latter role, different type to mind categories and communicative activities. There has functional communicative activities and social interactions activities. Approach to teaching grammar have undergone many changes. This Chang has saturates grammar teaching to more from a grammar-based approach to communicative language teaching CLT in prison as a way to convert students deliver their meaning appropriately. Grammar instruction can be performed, but deductive and inductively, but focus on the meaning and functions inform the situational context and the role of the interlocutors. In summary, educatively, grammar can be taught in communicative language teaching. Some students learn with rules of grammar, while others need rules to understand the grammatical structure. In conclusions, based on data analysis with using thematic analysis was found teacher and student perception toward grammar instructions in communicative language teaching. The first teacher's professions in teaching grammar instruction in communicative language teaching classroom. One, the teacher think that provide student with explicit explanation was an effective way to teach grammar instruction in GLT classroom. Two, in learning, personal teacher using group and peer work was designed to promote communication in TLT classroom. Three, teacher claimed that in learning process error corrections was one process student or to mastering material, so correcting mistake was an obligation for teacher. For teacher professions perceive that should act as motivator in the teacher learning process and training students to take responsibility in develop their activities. 5. In teaching grammar instruction in CLT classroom, students should not only mastering and theory but also practicing the theories. The second, student perceptions in learning grammar in communicative language teaching classroom. One student considered the grammar an important part in learning English today need to know and learning grammar. Two students claim that learning grammar in CLT with group activities help them to learn and practice comfortable. Three, in learning student error has been considered helpful in achieving successful communicative com- concepts. So students did not feel bad when the teacher correct their mistake. Student perceive in learning process teaching should motivate students to more practice in use English language and explain material interactively. 5. Students agree that they should taking part on the process of learning and following the learning process well. This this research only focus on the final the teacher and student perceptions in grammar instructions in communicative language teaching because the limitations of time by acknowledge the teacher and student perception in teaching and learning grammar instruction in communicative language teaching because the limitations of time we expect students consider grammar as an important part in learning English language. So this study can inspire the student to increase their interest in learning grammar and CLT classroom. So it is better for students to start using the language cognitively as the grassroots level. We hope the teacher help the student to consider a better way in teaching grammar instructions in CLT classroom. The teacher should know what the student need in improving student skill. The teacher also should create in English environment in the class to promote communication in TLT classroom. Also, the teacher should add motivator and teaching learning process to increase student opportunities to practice English because in learning English language is not only mastering grammar but also in increases student opportunities to practice English language less. We hope that the present student can be useful for the next future researching who are interested to active give more information about teacher and student reception in grammar instruction in communicative language teaching.